The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Dean's Beans Organic Coffee, a locally based, worker-owned company committed to social and environmental responsibility, roasting fair trade, organic, shade-grown coffee since 1993. DeansBeans.com. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the Handle Factory Community Clay Center, offering hands-on wheel throwing at the Green River Festival in Greenfield, June 19th and 21st. HandleFactory.com.
Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. Later in the show, Congressman Jim McGovern gets into the goings-on of Congress.
But first, you might have heard about 413 Gives.
And you're going to hear a lot more about it as the week goes on. June 11th is 413 Gives Day, and although we could explain the whole thing right now,
it's probably better to hear it from the folks who are putting it together.
last year, NEPM and so many public media organizations lost federal funding. But you, the community, stepped up to fill that void for us. And now NEPM wants to give back to other organizations that lost their funding.
On June 11th, it's 413 Gives Day. 413 Gives supports the nonprofit organizations that care for our neighbors across Western Mass. Many of those local nonprofits have also lost the federal funding that helped them provide food, shelter, childcare, immigration support, art services, and other essential services.
With us to talk about 413 Gives Day are the heads of 2/3 of the organizations leading the charge on this. Megan Burke, director of the Community Foundation of Western Mass, and Matt Abramovitz, president of NEPM.
Since 1991, the Community Foundation of Western Massachusetts has connected generous people with the needs of this region. From strengthening local nonprofits to helping area students reach their educational goals, they partner, plan, and collaborate to make sure that local philanthropy has a real impact.
NEPM provides an essential and trusted voice for the region through local reporting and locally produced music programming, and by connecting the region to the world through its partnership with NPR and other national and international public media organizations. Full disclosure, Khalees and I work for NEPM. But thank you both for being here to talk about 413 Gives Day. This is an exciting concept. Generosity is something that I value highly, and I think we've seen our community be generous in so many different ways through the means of NEPM in our fund drives, through the food bank march, and other ways the community has come together to give. But Matt Abramovitz, tell us why this is something 413 Gives Day that NEPM wanted to get behind.
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. One of them is what you said at the introduction, which is that in the last year, all public broadcasters lost their federal funding. And this was a really challenging moment for stations like ours. We got basically about $1 million, a little less than $1 million from the federal government every single year. And when that funding was clawed back by Congress in July, we didn't really know what was going to happen. And this community, thousands of our neighbors in the 413 basically said, hold my beer, and have replaced those federal funds for this year. And it was just a tremendous outpouring of support. And, we have an advantage. We have a megaphone where we can tell people about what's going on in our community. We can talk directly to the people who care about this work and what we deliver every day. And not every nonprofit has that. And so it was really important to us to recognize that one of the values that holds the 413 together is the belief that we do take care of each other. And so we wanted to recognize that we had an opportunity and an obligation to pay it forward, that the generosity we saw from the community, we wanted to embrace that and amplify it and partner with the Community Foundation of Western Mass and the Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation to make sure that the spirit that helped save public media this year could help the other nonprofits affected by federal funding cuts and other policy changes as well.
Megan, Monty and I remember years ago how Community Foundation ran something similar called Valley Gives. How did that experience inform the way that you and Berkshire Taconic and NEPM have organized 413 Gives?
Great question, Khalees, and thanks very much for having me on today. So Valley Gives. I don't think there's anyone in the Valley that didn't love Valley Gives. It really was such a collaborative effort where the Community Foundation was, similarly to NEPM, able to use its megaphone, our megaphone, to really call on folks in the community to step up and support nonprofits. Through Valley Gives, that was quite a number of years ago, and we were actually literally able to provide a technical platform where folks could go online and donate through a dedicated webpage page for their favorite nonprofit. We had a lot of fun with it, where we encouraged folks to sort of gamify it a little bit and run competitions and see how they could really show up for the nonprofits in their community. And I think with this, we really wanted to take some of that energy and that spirit of wanting to help one another out and really refocus it at this particular time on those nonprofits that have been most impacted by federal policy changes or federal funding cuts, or really just increased needs in different areas, which is really generating a lot of demand for their services.
So the Coordinated Day of Giving is going to be a week from today, Thursday, June 11th, and we will push out the website, and you'll see it all over social media of where you can donate, and people can donate. And then what happens? Megan Burke is one of the organizing bodies, because NEPM, right, Matt Abramovich, we're not taking any of this money. We already did our fund drive, and we really thank you for that.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen with the money that people donate a week from today?
So it'll all come into NEPM, and NEPM has really generously said we are going to pass it all to the 2 community foundations that serve Western Massachusetts. Here, based in Springfield, serving Franklin, Hampshire, and Hampden County is my community foundation, the Community Foundation. It's actually our Community Foundation of Western Mass, as well as Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation. And we basically put our heads together and said, what is the best way to make sure these resources get out to those nonprofits who most need the resources? And as community foundations, both here in Springfield and up and down the valley and in the Berkshires, both community foundations basically have a bird's eye view of where the greatest needs are and where those resources can be put to best use. So we did some complicated math, and we figured out the populations of the 4 counties in Western Mass, and we came up with a good way to distribute that so that, a chunk of it could go out to the Berkshires, to Berkshire Taconic, a chunk of it will come to our community foundation, and all of the funds that we receive at the Community Foundation of Western Mass, we will be re-granting out into the community to those nonprofits that need it the most.
How are you going to determine which nonprofits need it the most?
So we have actually a fund at the Community Foundation called the Community Resilience Fund. And this is a fund that exists at any time. Anyone could go onto our website and donate to it. It actually, interestingly, used to be called the COVID Relief Fund. And some of you may remember the incredible, what I was going to remind people was the incredible outpouring of support. Because let's focus on the positive.
Yes, and really it was tremendous. People were like in tumult with what was going to go on financially. Would they have a job? And yet the generosity locally and beyond was unbelievable.
Yep. So we were able to use that fund at that time, and we were able to leverage funds from outside the region, from across the state, and as well as generous folks right here to support nonprofits. The same fund still exists. We have renamed it because we recognize that many of the same challenges folks faced during COVID with food insecurity and other kinds of immediate needs are happening again. And so we will put the money in there, but really, in terms of which nonprofits, we already have a pretty good idea of this because we did recently run a grant opportunity, and some folks may have seen this in May, and we were able to award a tranche of funds just recently. The amount of demand for funds through that grant opportunity, there was request for $7 for every single dollar we could hand out. We could have made 7 times as many grants through that opportunity. And we heard from so many nonprofits about all kinds of challenges they're facing, federal funding cuts they've already experienced or that they're expecting. And so we already have all that information. And so we kind of have a list ready to go. And as soon as the funds come in, we will be able to, based on the amount that's raised, make those funds available pretty much immediately in the community.
That's Megan Burke, the Executive Director of the Community Foundation of Western Mass, which is one of the 3 partners that'll be behind 413 Gives Day a week from today, Thursday, June 11th, alongside the Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation and us here at NEPM.
How often do you get to work with other community foundations in a way like this?
Not often enough, Khalees. That's the honest answer. So here in Massachusetts, we do have a network of the community foundations across the state. We come together in person once a year. Sometimes we see each other in other moments, and we do meet sort of quarterly to just check in, see what other folks are hearing. Community foundations are super collaborative. We don't compete. But this is the first time that we've had an opportunity like this to work directly with Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation. And I will say right now, I know you're hearing from Kara, my counterpart over there as well, but we're thrilled by this opportunity.
Yeah, and I will say that that when we were on a Zoom call in one of our planning sessions, and you and Kara from the Berkshire Taconic Foundation, Community Foundation, said you had never done anything like this together before across all 4 counties in Western Mass. I thought, oh my gosh,
It really
it's
feels
happening.
good.
You guys made it happen.
Yeah, and it
Yay.
really, and that is, I think that's the spirit that Monty and Khalees, you two both bring to this show every day, which is that we look at the whole region and the needs and the experiences of the people living here, and it's not just about my region over here and your region over there, and it really is the whole 413. And I think to see that kind of come together was a really really fulfilling moment for me.
Khalees mentioned Valley Gives Day, which I was a big fan of and a big part of in the beginning of that years ago. And I was on 93.9 The River, commercial radio station, and it was like a 24-hour-long event. I used to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to do my morning show. I set an alarm for like 11:50 that night to see how much the community had raised in that day, and it was inspirational. I was like in tears seeing, we were competing with major metropolises like Philadelphia and, big cities in just our little tiny Western Massachusetts. So the amount of generosity that is here in the 4 counties, even though our population isn't great, is huge. And this may be a little bit into the radio weeds, Matt Abramovitz, but as a commercial radio host, I was like listening to, it was at WFCR at the time, saying like they're fundraising, but they're fundraising for themselves. They basically turned Valley Gives Day into their own fund drive. I guess a blessing and a curse is that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting doesn't exist anymore, because it then liberates us to do this kind of thing like 413 Gives Day next week in a way that was more tricky legally before.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely in the weeds, but as a recipient of grants from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which was the clearinghouse that sent out those federal grants to public stations, we could not fundraise for other nonprofit entities. And so if you were listening to Valley Gives and you heard WFCR fundraising, that's what they could do.
Yeah.
And obviously it was in their interest to do that. And obviously the rules of the game have changed in the last year. And so to me, I think there's an opportunity here that speaks to what's in our DNA in public broadcasting, the sense that by telling our stories and hearing from stories outside of our bubble, that we can be more empathetic, better human beings, and tie our communities together more effectively. I feel that this is an opportunity for us, from the perspective we have covering all 4 counties, to think about how can we do good? And how do we use the gifts we have of these broadcast licenses and the relationships we have with our TV and radio fans to make this community stronger? And so this is our first year trying something that is really different than what we could do in the past, but I think it is still very deep in the core of what we believe and how we all show up to work every day.
To Monty's point, is this sort of thing unique to NEPM, or are you seeing across like your connections with other stations efforts like this within communities where the local public media outlets are trying to collaborate with other nonprofits in the area because everyone's hurt by these cuts?
I haven't seen as many examples of something exactly like this at other stations yet. What you see across other stations, you'll see things like what Monty and you folks do for Hunger Awareness Week and the March for the Food Bank. There's lots of stations that have partnerships with local food banks and raise money for them. This is a slightly different approach where we're looking at the nonprofit sector, doing some coverage around that, and also raising money to support it. So it's a little bit different. I haven't seen examples of it yet. But I would say my public media colleagues across the country have a really deep commitment to making our communities healthier, stronger, and responsive to what's happening on the ground. So I would expect more of these things to come.
That's the president of NEPM, Matt Abramovitz. Megan Burke, the executive director of the Community Foundation of Western Mass. The money that will be raised on 413 Gives Day a week from today will go into this resilience fund that you have at Community Foundation, a similar fund at Berkshire Taconic. And we're going to talk to a bunch of folks over the course of the next week who have benefited from these resilience funds. But tell us, from your perspective, some of either the names of the organizations or the types of organizations that have come forward to receive these funds and may get them in the future.
Yeah, for sure. And I do want to say, and I'll get to an answer to your question too, but in terms of your last question, Khalees, I think one of the things that is similar about this, even though now NEPM is able to do this in a different way, is that when we partnered previously, there was an assistance in raising visibility about the work that nonprofits were doing and the important work they do in the community. And now you're also able to directly support the fundraising that will fund that work. One of the things I have heard through this current partnership is that nonprofits are just incredibly really appreciative of already hearing from NEPM, wanting to do spotlights on their work, wanting to raise the visibility of the important work that they're doing. And just yesterday, I got another email from someone saying, "Oh, it was so great to be able to do that." And then a friend of mine heard my voice on the radio, and she was just thrilled. So, I mean, it's a powerful tool, right? And we're really able to use that for good. The types of nonprofits that have stepped up, unfortunately, it's almost every single sector that's been impacted in some way. I would like to say it's just one little niche over here, but it's really not. And so we kept our last round of community resilience grants to be pretty broad-based, with the common thread being, is there some sort of funding cut as a result of federal policy changes, or are the demand for their services impacted by those federal policy changes? And we saw really a slew of different organizations, a lot of basic human needs providers, folks that are providing food, diaper drives, all of the things that families, when they're, having a temporary or a longer term crisis, really need to ask their neighbors to help with. We also saw things like legal services for immigrants in the community, or heightened security needs for the LGBTQ community here in Western Mass. For some faith-based communities needing additional coverage for some of their own security. We really tried to not define what the particular needs would be, but rather listen to the community through our nonprofit partners and hear from them in terms of the types of needs that they were seeing.
Along those lines, in our original copy, the list of services that are provided doesn't include the arts, and I keep putting it back in there. Because if we don't have art, why are we here?
Yeah.
It is an actual service. It is an actual necessity for humanity and being humane, and it should be represented as such, even though it's undervalued.
However, the Community Foundation and the Berkshire Taconic Foundation both do great work in supporting the arts. Full disclosure, Shea Theater's been a beneficiary of that. I make no money off of it, but I full-time volunteer there. And it's been supportive on all sorts of different levels for all sorts of great occasions, the Food Bank of Western Mass, etc. 413 Gives Day is a week from today. You'll hear all about it from now through then. You'll hear about it a lot next Thursday. But if you think you might forget and want to go and start to contribute right now, you can already go to nepm.org/413gives. It's our first attempt at this community-wide, area code-based day of giving, not for us, which you have so generously done, and to make up the void that was left by the cuts in the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, but for us to give back to so many other nonprofits through the two great community foundations on both sides of the mountain, Berkshire Taconic and the Community Foundation of Western Mass. We've been joined by the executive director of the Community Foundation of Western Mass, Megan Burke, as well as our boss and friend, an avid birder who went out with us with David Sibley during our actual fund drive, President and CEO of NEPM, Matt Abramovitz. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you.
And now we're going to talk to your counterparts from across the mountains. That's right. More 413 Gives partners up next as we chat with Kara Mikulich and Maeve O'Day of Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation about collaborating across the mountains and their work helping folks in 4 counties across 4 states as well. Well, 3 states. 3 states as well.
That's plenty of states. After which, we'll McGovern with McGovern and hear what happened in the House of Representatives yesterday.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the UMass 5 College Credit Union, dedicated to creating access to financial well-being for local people, businesses, and communities. Insured by NCUA, umass5.coop.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. 413 Gives is a community-wide day of giving. NEPM has partnered with the Community Foundation of Western Massachusetts and the Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation to make it simple to give and to make every dollar count in our community. 100% of your donations will go to fund these nonprofits.
We're joined by the leadership of one of our partners on this endeavor, Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation President Kara Mikulich and Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation Program Director Maeve O'Day. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Kara, people may have heard the term community foundation before. I have many times jokingly said that community foundations are our do-good Illuminati, where they're like a behind-the-scenes organization, sometimes invested in by well-heeled individuals, and their money goes out to support good organizations throughout wherever their community foundation is based. But can you tell us, from your perspective as the leader of the Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation, what you are and what you do?
Sure. Thank you, Monty. I love the way you describe community foundations. Under the regulations, community foundations, we are nonprofits, 501c3 nonprofit tax-exempt charities. We cover a specific geography. In our case, all of Berkshire County in Massachusetts. And then we exist to help the residents in our region fulfill their charitable visions and to support the nonprofits in our region to meet their mission through grant making and support of nonprofits.
Much like another Berkshire organization that we talk with, Berkshire Agricultural Ventures, you cover not just the Berkshire County of Massachusetts, but also Litchfield in Connecticut, Dutchess County in New York, and one other New York county that
Columbia.
Thank you. Eventually, I will remember all 4 of these counties. But is it hard to navigate 3 states worth of regulations to try and make sure that the organizations who need your support get your support?
That's a good question. We are unusual for a community foundation in covering 4 counties across 3 states. And I will tell you that we do try our best to keep up on policy and program developments in all 3 of our states. We do like to joke sometimes that we're kind of like the far corner from the state capitals of each of our states. But we are also finding, we've had some recent surveys of our nonprofits, and we're finding that the same needs are true across our 4-county region.
That is the president of the Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation, Kara Mikulich. We're also joined by the foundation's program director, Maeve O'Day. Tell us about some of the programs that your community foundation supports and maybe how 413 Gives will help support those programs as well.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So we're actually looking for this 413 Gives program to support our Neighbor to Neighbor initiative. And that is an initiative that works with grantee partners across our region to make grants to social service organizations. And then we ask those social service organizations to give help to individuals and households as they are at a point in their lives where they need a little help. Maybe it's to keep the utilities on, to fix the car, to get some medications, whatever those organizations determine is the best use of that funding. That's what we are happy to have them do. And we try to make these dollars go as far as possible. Historically, they've been supported by our donors. And also we have some funds that are geographically focused, and they make contributions to Neighbor to support residents of their communities. So we're thrilled to have this opportunity to expand this support.
Have you gotten to work with other community foundations like 413 Gives is encouraging you to do with the Community Foundation of Western Massachusetts?
We have. And in fact, the Community Foundation of Western Massachusetts is a really strong partner of ours. And the community foundation field in general is very collaborative. You know, we've all got our own geographies, but we have sort of similar missions. And there's a wonderful network of community foundations across Massachusetts that's been organized under the umbrella of Philanthropy Massachusetts. There has been a somewhat long-term initiative that the Barr Foundation in Massachusetts has funded around arts. And it is the Community Foundation Network that has really brought together several of the community foundations that are funding local arts organizations across the Commonwealth. They decided to work with community foundations because they saw when they started up their arts program 10 years ago that community foundations are really in a place to know the local grantee community, the nonprofit infrastructure and ecosystem in a county, in a city, in a region. You know, they partnered with several community foundations throughout the Commonwealth to ensure that there was like a really local funder on the ground in each of the subregions around the state.
Which is why I know a lot of people feel if they have a lot of money that they want to do good with, they go through community foundations. I know that the Community Foundation of Western Mass has donor-advised funds. Is that something that the Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation does as well? Let's say you inherited a lot of money, you are a wealthy person, and you want to do the best good possible rather than just you deciding piecemeal what to do. You use the advice and wisdom of, as you were saying, the folks on the ground through the community foundations. Is that something else that you do, Kara?
Yes, we do offer donor-advised funds. Donor-advised funds make up about 25% of our assets under management. And a lot of donors like to come to a community foundation because they can learn from my colleagues like Maeve and her colleagues on the program team who know the nonprofits on the ground so well, and we can really help them and guide them in their giving. But also, I have to say that you don't necessarily have to be wealthy to open up a donor advised fund. I think the average size of our fund is not as large as you would think. The minimum to open up a fund is $10,000, which does require resources. But I like to think of community foundations as also democratizing giving. People can open up their own funds, like a donor advised fund, but they can also give a grant to existing funds that we operate, such as our neighbor to neighbor funds.
We're talking about 413 Gives Day. It's our first attempt at this. It's Thursday, June 11th, and we at NEPM are teaming up with the Community Foundation of Western Massachusetts, as well as the Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation. We're talking with two of the leaders of that organization, President Kara Mikulich and the program director, Maeve O'Day.
Speaking of that democratizing, many of the organizations that you work with were receiving some federal funds in addition to the grants that they would get from the Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation. Maeve, what have you seen from those organizations need-wise or effect-wise from that loss of federal funding?
I will say that what we have seen is a pretty significant increase in people coming forward for help. For instance, people who were receiving SNAP benefits then, when there was a temporary pause and they were no longer receiving the benefit, up to 10% of those people did not re-up. And so, now they're turning to their communities' food pantries. Where we are in Berkshire County, there are a small number of large organizations, but we're more characterized by smaller organizations that are not necessarily dependent on federal funding, but are certainly seeing an increased need in the community.
Can you tell us, Maeve, a success story in the wake of these federal cuts?
So I'll mention an initiative that we have in another part of our catchment area, which I think if it is as successful as we hope it will be, will expand to also include Berkshire County. And that is where we are working with two other foundations to provide financial scenario planning. And this, we hope, will be really helpful to organizations as they plan for the future, perhaps dealing with some sudden funding cuts, so that they have a clear understanding of their organization's finances and what their options might be going forward. So we started with an online webinar for a number of organizations, and then those organizations can apply to receive one-on-one consultancy support as they think through their next 1 to 2 years. And there's no cost to the organizations. This is all supported by the participating foundations.
If either of you have worked in other areas of nonprofits, would you say that there is a difference in either trust level or general engagement for fundraising as a community foundation as opposed to like some of those smaller nonprofit organizations who, in addition to your grants, are kind of having to fundraise on their own?
It's because there's a really nice example. At the end of last year, we learned of anonymous donors in Massachusetts. No idea who they are, where they are, but they are working with community foundations across the state to give money to meet basic needs in recognition of the hard times that we're in and facing. Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation was the recipient of $500,000 of this funding, and it was given to us, I think, with the trust that we know how to get that money out into the community in a way that's fair and that covers the entire county. And so with that funding, we gave additional grants through our Neighbor to Neighbor initiative. We have immigrant support funds, and we have one for Berkshire County, and so that received funding. We also identified a number of food programs throughout the county that we gave one-time grants to. It was wonderful, that we were able to give that level of support. And I think the donors, I hope, felt good that we knew exactly how to get that funding out quickly and comprehensively.
Community foundations have sort of a bird's eye view of the nonprofit ecosystem across the county. Maeve and her team interact with those direct service nonprofits all the time, and they're reviewing proposals, and they're meeting, and they're reporting, and they're convening. And so there is an efficiency, I would say, that particular donor saw, and Maeve and her team were able to, expedite those funds really quickly.
I feel like we should ask about getting the band together for 413 Gives Day and what it's been like to in this case, collaborate with NEPM and the Community Foundation of Western Massachusetts, from your perspective.
Karen Mikulich, the president of the Berkshire-Taconic Community Foundation.
I just really want to thank and give credit to New England Public Media for coming forward like this. New England Public Media, you yourselves have been, national public media has been the subject of federal funding cuts as well. So for you to reach out to the larger nonprofit community and really highlight the increasing need for services and the quickly shrinking funding sources that are coming from government funding is a huge service. And the fact that we all share the 413 area code and the 4 counties across Massachusetts, we share a lot of similarities, a lot of similar needs. And we're just grateful to NEPM for raising up this issue, providing days of coverage of the impacts of funding cuts on nonprofits, and also for just highlighting how community foundations can really help address nonprofit needs.
We didn't mean to just have you stroke our ego like that, but thank you.
Yeah, we weren't. Well, I mean, I'll say honestly, I came from the commercial radio world, and there was a community-wide effort of a giving day that happened, and I was always a little bit disappointed in our public media station for not giving a little more airtime to some of the other nonprofits. Turns out maybe it was legal reasons in the Corporation for Public Broadcasting that didn't allow that to happen. But now that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting doesn't exist anymore, and it's a little bit of the Wild West when it comes to nonprofit media, we might as well use these airwaves to support so many other great organizations. And who better to team with than, as you were saying, Kara, the organizations that have their ear to the ground when it comes to nonprofits in the 4 counties of Western Mass. And that would be the Community Foundation of Western Mass and you, the Berkshire-Taconic Community Foundation. 413 Gives Day is Thursday, June 11th. You can find out all the details and donate to support through these community foundations and support some of the organizations you'll hear from over the course of the next week by going to nepm.org/413gives. We have been joined by the president of Berkshire-Taconic Community Foundation, Karen Mikulich, and Berkshire-Taconic Community Foundation Program Director, Maeve O'Day. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you both.
We'll continue highlighting some of the organizations that have benefited from those resilience funds and programs over the next week, starting with an organization that also straddles the mountains with programs in Hampden and Berkshire counties, 18 Degrees.
And now to turn our attention to Washington and the progress we're sort of making there with the Congressman for the 2nd Congressional District, Jim McGovern, who may just share our frustrations about the lack of progress.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Berkshire Choral International, performing British Mavericks, choral orchestral works by Britton and Smith, June 27th at the UMass Fine Arts Center, berkshirechoral.org.
Hanging out with Richard Gere this week, I saw.
Yeah, and he is actually going to be coming to Western Mass, I think in September.
Oh, yeah? For what?
We'll screen a film on Tibet, but I'll let you know, because maybe you can get a few words with him.
That'd be great. Have him come by the studio and hang out. See if he actually is an officer and a gentleman.
Yeah. He's a really nice guy. I mean, I've known him for a long time, and he's very, very nice. He's what keeps the Tibetan issue alive in Congress,
Time for our weekly check-in with U.S. Congressman from the 2nd Congressional District of Massachusetts, the ranking member of the Rules Committee, Jim McGovern, McGoverning with McGovern. And after months of pushing this forward with you as a co-sponsor very frequently, Democrats yesterday did finally compel a floor vote on a measure reining in Trump's authority in the Iran conflict after you accused the GOP last week of, quote, having no balls. To do so, 4 Republicans joined Democrats yesterday. Now what? Is the war over? Is the war in Iran done?
No, I mean, we have to get in sync with the Senate, or they have to get in sync with us. But it's important because it has Congress on record, because the Senate voted in a similar way a couple of weeks ago. It shows that Congress wants us to end. I mean, we're spending $1.5 billion a day on this war. And at the same time, they bring in an ag appropriation bill before the Rules Committee yesterday that cuts WIC by $200 million. I mean, gas prices are through the roof. I mean, grocery prices are through the roof. Rents are at an all-time high. And we're spending all this money on a war of choice, on an illegal war, on a reckless war halfway around the world. I think it's added pressure on the administration to, find a way to get out. But it also indicates if they come to Congress for money, the votes may not be there. I mean, because right now all of this cost is being put on our credit card. So it's a significant step forward. It doesn't end the war, but it shows that the mood here is changing.
Will the mood change again today, I suppose, because there's a Russian sanctions bill that's being put forward, and there has been some Republican support for this to boost Ukraine's defenses in the past. Do you think that this is where the tide is turning to push back against the war in Iran, to better support Ukraine in their war against Russia, or what is going on right now?
I hope so. I mean, we'll wait and see. I mean, one of the things that has frustrated me is that I have a lot of Republican colleagues that will tell me that they agree with me privately, but publicly vote the other way. So I don't know how hard the administration is lobbying on this bill. There's also another war powers resolution on Lebanon, which I spoke on last night on the House floor. I mean, again, trying to get some of these debated and where people stand.
I think a lot of people don't know about the U.S. involvement in Lebanon. They may be hearing about Israel's involvement in Lebanon. I know Representative Rashida Tlaib has been very vocal about this. Can you tell us what the situation is with U.S. troops in Lebanon and what is seemingly a less likely measure to pass?
I mean, the bottom line is that many of the bombs that are being used against civilians in Lebanon are from the United States. It's our direct aid to Benjamin Netanyahu and the aid with no strings, no human rights criteria. So there's one way we're being involved. We train troops. We're told that Trump has greenlighted a number of the operations against Lebanon. And, I know people have varying opinions on all of this, but the bottom line is that our country, one of the things that we ought to adhere to are the principles of basic human rights. And that's just not happening anymore. I mean, it's not happening with what we're doing in Iran. It's not happening with the military aid that we're sending to Netanyahu, which is being used in Lebanon against a lot of civilians. I mean, thousands displaced, children killed. And I worry that if we don't start to change our ways and start to lift up human rights as the centerpiece of our foreign policy, that just creates more chaos and more violence in the region. It undercuts our security. It undercuts stability in the Middle East. I mean, it's just bad. Again, we're seeing with the war in Iran. Dropping bombs on Iran is not solving anything. It's not doing anything about Iran's nuclear program. It's not doing anything except closing the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, it's just, war is not the answer. I keep on thinking of our dear friend Paki Whelan. What she'd be saying right now. She'd probably be out in front of the Capitol right now with a sign protesting all these wars. But her instincts were always correct on this, and that is, that wars just lead to more chaos.
Is the tide turning, though, with these 3 votes?
I think we have some good news, but I think we'd be fooling ourselves if we said that the tide has turned. We still have a long way to go. And by the way, we're talking about foreign entanglements right now, but here at home, I mean, they're decimating the social safety net. The cuts to SNAP, we're told that hundreds of thousands of children have now been thrown off the program, and we think it's in the millions, but this is just the preliminary findings. Cutting WIC, the Women's, Infants, and Children's Program, by $200 million. I mean, what kind of rotten, screwed up people do that kind of stuff? I mean, it's just so wrong. And what's frustrating is that programs like WIC used to be bipartisan. Those votes were never contentious, and now they are. And they're saying we don't have the money for that, but we have the money for war. We don't have the money for that, but we have the money for tax cuts for billionaires. We don't have the money for WIC, but we have money for a ballroom. I mean, and the corruption in this White House is like nothing I have ever seen or read about in our entire history. I mean, I'm nostalgic for Richard Nixon. They're so corrupt. We all know about the slush fund that he tried to get through. Mm-hmm. But what's less talked about, and it's even more disturbing, is the agreement that he's reached that he or his entire family cannot be held accountable for any past crimes or any future crimes, not only involving his finances, but involving the Epstein files. He has essentially given himself a blanket pardon for his past and for his future misdeeds. It's outrageous. He's the president, and nobody's above the law in this country. No one's supposed to be above the law. and he behaves as if he's a king.
The brakes were pumped to a certain degree on the, quote, anti-weaponization fund, and Todd Blanche, who is the former Trump personal attorney, who is the acting attorney general, is being pushed forward, I believe, today to become the permanent attorney general. And as you mentioned, there is some speculation that he's given himself some sort of blanket lifetime pardon. What is the likelihood that Todd Blanche becomes the attorney general proper?
With this Senate, who knows? But he was the president's personal lawyer. And what we need is a lawyer for our nation, right? We don't need someone protecting Donald Trump. We need someone who's worried about U.S. citizens and what's happening in this country. I don't know whether they have the votes or not. I mean, he's a lousy acting attorney general, and I think he'll be a lousy and corrupt full attorney general if he gets confirmed.
Speaking with U.S. Congressman Jim McGovern, McGoverning with McGovern, we've mentioned it a couple times so far, but there were massive cuts to WIC, $200 million. And I did see a speech you gave on the floor of the House or some of your social media posting about the excuse as to why they want to cut WIC because of a lack of participation. Can you talk about what went on to lead to that, which then inevitably led to the cuts?
I mean, increased paperwork and the shutdown where, people weren't able to enroll in the program. And to suggest that somehow the need isn't there, which in the Rules Committee yesterday, a number of my Republican colleagues did, is ludicrous. I mean, the bottom line is the price of food is going up. This is about making sure pregnant mothers and children get the nutrition they need so they can, have a healthy pregnancy and hopefully have a healthy life, but they shut the government down, and as a result, few people were able to enroll. There's lots of confusion, but the WIC Association and every other indicator tells us that was a blip and that, in fact, enrollment is now going up rapidly, and that even with the $200 million, if we funded the whole thing, it would not be enough to cover the need out there. This is a sad situation. And again, at a time when you're spending $1.5 billion a day on a war of choice in the Middle East.
It is somewhat shocking to say that participation in WIC is down because the government was shut down for a historically long period of time, and then to use that as an excuse to defund it. I can't math that math, as they say.
Well, yeah, and their spin is, no, the need isn't great because the economy's going so well. It's like such BS and such a crock that it's just hard to, I'll be honest, it's just hard to sit in a committee hearing, without wanting to throw something at somebody. It's just so outrageous. And again, I mean, government really should be focused on helping the most vulnerable in this country, and we're doing the opposite.
While many folks in the U.S. are excited about the NBA playoffs, you have gone after the NBA, saying that they should divest from the United Arab Emirates. I don't know, maybe it's because you're bitter that the Celtics didn't make it into the finals here, but can you tell us a little bit about what your beef is with the NBA and the UAE?
Well, as you know, I mean, for a long, long time now, there's been a genocide unfolding and happening in Sudan. One of the enablers of that genocide is the UAE. They provide weapons and they provide military assistance and even advisors. And the NBA has made a number of very lucrative business deals with the UAE. And what some of us have suggested is that, the NBA should stop those financial dealings until we get a commitment from the UAE that they're not going to contribute to the genocide in Darfur. I don't think that's asking too much. There are a number of other companies that we have also singled out. But this is it. I mean, look, you want to do business with people around the world, fine. But when you do business with people who are war criminals, that should give us all pause. And the NBA, has some juice here. They have some influence. And they may be able to stop the terrible atrocities happening in Sudan. And we're just saying, do it. We got a terse response from the NBA saying they're following all the rules and regulations under law. That may, and that may be the case because in this current administration, human rights doesn't matter. But from a moral perspective, they have an obligation here, not to aid and abet people who are doing these horrible things.
Basketball, gimme the ball.
Isn't that the...
It's Tim Robinson from Saturday Night Live.
Yes, but isn't the piece done written by John? Darn it, from Entertainment
John
Tonight.
Tesh.
Thank you.
Yes.
Gosh. All right, conversation with U.S. Representative Jim McGovern continues as we explore possible congressional support for an executive order about AI, his attendance at the Food is Medicine conference, and how human rights is and should be more of a local issue.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Visiting Angels West Springfield, providing home care for seniors and veterans in Hampden County, including Angel Care, short-term post-surgery support for seniors and their loved ones. visitingangels.com/West Springfield. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Northeast Solar in Hatfield, specializing in solar installations, battery storage, and clean energy solutions tailored to the homes and businesses of Western Massachusetts. Northeast-solar.com.
Speaking with U.S. Congressman Jim McGovern, McGoverning with McGovern, I know that you have been critical since Jump Street of the Trump administration, but I'm wondering if you or maybe some other Democrats are finding some bipartisan support for a recent executive order on AI that came out of the White House, where AI companies would submit their new models to a voluntary government review 30 days before releasing the product to the public. There was an earlier draft that had called for a voluntary review 90 days in advance. I don't know if the voluntary part may raise some red flags or not, but what's your take on this executive order and trying to rein in AI as it is quickly spiraling beyond what anyone believed it could possibly do?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still studying what the administration has proposed. I just don't trust them. I just assume, and I hope I'm wrong in this case, that everything that comes out of this White House deals with enriching the president and his family. And so I have no idea who would be part of this commission or what the administration would be willing to do or not do. But you were right. I mean, AI is rapidly moving forward. We should have really addressed these issues a while ago. I mean, in some cases, the cat is out of the bag, but it's dangerous. I mean, I was talking to Tom Massey, who just lost his seat in Kentucky, about some of the commercials that were run. He said that looked unbelievably real. Commercials that had him, AOC, and Ilhan Omar, going into a hotel room together. And people were responding to him, well, what are you going to a hotel room with those people?
Wow.
He's like,
it's like the OnlyFans for the Republican Party or something like that.
Yeah, but it's like, that's an example of distortion and misuse and deception. And, you're seeing that in business, you're seeing it in so many forms. So, if Congress were doing its job, I mean, there'd be major oversight hearings and, major initiatives to try to reel this stuff in. But Congress under this leadership right now is basically silent. And we'll see whether there's any merit to what the administration does. If there is, I'd be supportive. But again, I just don't trust them.
We talk a lot about hunger issues. We talk a lot about food and agriculture. And you had a Food is Medicine conference this week. The MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again, has a lot of overlap with some more progressive ideas when it comes to food as medicine and the impact of big pharma, etc. I'm wondering how that conference went and whether there was some bipartisan support from the sort of RFK Jr. end of the current Republican Party.
Yeah, I mean, my point at that conference was we got to do more than talk the talk. You got to walk the walk. And again, I'm not singling out RFK Jr., but the administration in general. I mean, when I heard about Make America Healthy Again, I thought it would be about making sure that we got chemicals out of the food that we give our kids, that we would be focused on better quality food for our kids and for all people, that we would be supporting programs like the Farm to School program or the fruit and veggie voucher, which helps struggling families have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. I thought we would be talking about medically tailored meals and food prescriptions and, and that food is medicine. And I made the point that health begins in the kitchen. So those were all the things that I thought were going to be associated with MAHA, regenerative agriculture, for example. And my point was that notwithstanding all the nice talk, there's no policy that actually advances any of these things. We're cutting SNAP. They eliminated the Farm to School program. They're cutting WIC. All these, food is medicine pilot projects and initiatives that many of us have talked about and we have legislation on are not moving. So I think the argument can be made that they're not making America healthy again. They're doing the opposite. I'm all for MAHA. Most of what they say, some of the stuff that has been kind of tied into that, I'm not with them on. But we need to do a better job. But you can't do it and gut all the programs that can help move it forward.
I want to learn how to snake handle like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Did you see that video?
Well,
that was nuts.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Speaking of Robert F. Kennedy, his father, Robert F. Kennedy Sr., has an award named after him, and you are going to be a keynote speaker tonight at the 2026 Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Award. And I believe the award is going to the National Union of People's Lawyers from the Philippines. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Tell us what you'll be talking about that organization tonight.
Yeah, what I'm going to be talking about is that human rights is not just a concern halfway around the world. It should be a concern halfway down the block. It's hard for us to be effective in calling out dictatorial and authoritarian regimes around the world when our own country is moving in that direction. We're seeing ICE and CBP murder U.S. citizens. We're seeing ICE detention centers that are like concentration camps. There are hunger strikes going on. We have American citizens being picked up because they look like they're immigrants. I mean, and then the attacks on the press. I mean, you saw what happened with Scott Pelley in 60 Minutes.
Mm-hmm. It's
chilling. And this stuff is happening as we speak. And so we have to understand that, and we have to pay attention to the unraveling of our democratic institutions here in our own country. One of the things that I worry about, and I hear this a lot at my town hall meetings, is people will get up and say, I turn on the news today, it's not one thing, it's not two things, it's like 10 things that really, disturb me. And I'm exhausted, and I feel overwhelmed, and I feel powerless. And I just want to pull the shade and wake me up when it's all over. And I understand that feeling, but that's a deliberate tactic by the people in power to get you to give up, maybe not to not even vote, to certainly not raise your voice. And we have to resist. We have to resist that feeling of powerlessness, because we may get to a point where if we don't stop this stuff, we won't be able to stop this stuff. That's kind of the theme that I'm going to be talking about tonight. But Kerry Kennedy is the head of the organization, and the RFK Human Rights Institute has done incredible work on human rights all over the world. We just did a press conference yesterday to urge the Salvadoran government to free Ruth Lopez, who's a human rights activist who over a year ago was picked up by the Bukele regime, and she's in prison, held incommunicado, can't have visitors, has health problems, and it's just another sad indication of the deterioration of human rights in that country.
U.S. Congressman from the 2nd Congressional District of Massachusetts, what's giving you hope this week?
Well, when I was in Massachusetts, I had a meeting with a lot of the heads and leaders in the credit union associations around Massachusetts, credit unions from Western Mass and Central Mass. And what they wanted to talk about was how they can be more effective in combating food insecurity and hunger in our own communities, and talking about some of the stuff that they have already done, about how they want to get more engaged in that, because, they're seeing with some of the people that utilize credit unions that this is becoming a bigger problem. So that gives me hope, because, we need an all-hands-on-deck approach if we're going to make a dent in hunger in this country. And there are good players in our community that are doing that and want to do more. So I'm going to shout out to the credit unions this week.
U.S. Congressman from the 2nd Congressional District, Jim McGovern, joins us every week, except next week when I'll be on the Cape. So we'll get a fortnight break, but you can still send your questions to the Congressman, and I'll ask him next time we have him on if you send your questions to thefab413@nepm.org. Thanks so much, Congressman.
Have a good time at the Cape.
I will.
All the best.
Thanks.
Beach times.
Yes.
Ahead for you. But on the next Fabulous 413, the Green River Festival is a mere 2 weeks away, and we sit with organizer John Sanders to learn more about who'll be there this year besides us, because we will also be there.
Here's one of the headliners that you'll hear at the Green River Festival.
Oh, I love them so much.
Spoon. I have yet to see them live, so I'm very excited to see them live.
I've seen them a couple of times. The first time was after their second or third album, and they were very drunk.
Well, maybe they won't be drunk this time, but maybe they'll be excellent.
Yeah, no, they've mostly wandered away from their willful 20s. We'll also meet Stephanie Steed of the organization 18 Degrees and learn about the ways they help and support foster parents and kids throughout Western Mass.
They're part of 413 Gives, which is a week from today. And we'll also, tomorrow, take a look at a new exhibit at Memorial Hall Museum in Old Deerfield, where they look at the Bay State's history through beer and brewing. I'm Monty Belmonte.
I'm Khalees Smith. We'll talk to you tomorrow on the Fabulous 413, and maybe find out who you're excited to see at the Green River Fest, because there's a lot for me.